Hello viewers, welcome to my channel. Second matter, the solution to your math problems. We are still on bearings. We are looking at distance bearing problems. This is our fourth question. I read. An aeroplane flew from town P at a bearing of 40 degrees to another town Q for 300 kilometers. So let's represent this information on the diagram. So between town P and town Q, where do we draw or where do we measure the 40 degrees bearing? So from town P, So let's do this. So there's our geographical notes. Here is town P, 40 degrees. 40 degrees. So we know that for the three-figure bearing, angles are read from the geographical notes in the clockwise direction. That is 40 degrees to another town. So this town here is town Q. And what is the distance between the two towns? 300 kilometers. Now we have to find A, how far north the aeroplane has traveled, and then B, how far east the aeroplane has traveled. So where is how far north the aeroplane has traveled and how far east the aeroplane has traveled? So now let's look at something. This is the starting point of the plane and this is the plane's destination. So from the starting point in relation to its current location, this is how far north it has traveled. So this height here, from P to this point, that is how far north the aeroplane has traveled. Although the aeroplane is currently located at town Q, but for how far north it has traveled, that is the distance from P to this point. That is how far north it has traveled. What of how far east it has traveled? So for how far east it has traveled, that will be from this distance here from P to this point refers to how far east it has traveled. So take note, from here to this point, this distance here is how far east it has traveled. And then from here to this point represent how far north it has traveled. But again, for how far north it has traveled, you will see that the distance from this point to this point is also the same as the distance from P to this point. So you have to decide how to draw your diagram. In my case, I prefer to draw it this way. So this line here represents how far east it has traveled. And again, this length here, see that this length here is also the same as how far north it has traveled. So that I will not use this. So I'm going to focus on this side. I'm going to focus on this side. So now if we see that we are having a right angle triangle here. We are having a right angle triangle here. So I'm naming this point as R. I'm naming this point here as R. So now, how then do we calculate how far east it has traveled and then how far north it has traveled? At least we need an interior angle inside the right angle triangle. So now let's focus on this quadrant. The measure of a quadrant is 90 degrees. So if this part of the quadrant measures 40 degrees, then this side here must also measure 50 degrees. So now let's identify the sides of our right angle triangle. So this is our acute angle. So this side becomes the opposite, because we said that opposite is the side facing the acute angle. This side here becomes our hypotenuse, because it is the longest side. Again, it is the side facing the 90 degrees angle. Then the remaining side here becomes our adjacent. So now the A part, how far north the aeroplane has traveled. So this distance here, from here to this point, this distance refers to how far north the aeroplane has traveled. So to calculate how far north, you will need the opposite. We also have our hypotenuse, the longest side. So from SOHCAHTOA, which of them has opposite hypotenuse? So what does SO says? SO says that the sine of the acute angle here, 50, is equal to the length of the opposite. So I'm naming the length of the opposite as QR over the length of the hypotenuse. What is the length of the hypotenuse? 300 kilometers. So sine 50 is the same as sine 50 on 1. You can cross multiply. And that should give us 300 sine 50 is equal to QR. So from our calculators, what is 300 sine 50? So that is to 2 decimal places, 229.8181. So finally, the aeroplane has traveled 229.81 kilometers north. So that is how far north it has traveled, 229.81 kilometers. And then the last one, B, how far east it has traveled. So how far east it has traveled, meaning that you are looking at this distance from here to this point. How far east? Here to this point. So to calculate how far east it has traveled, you will need the adjacent as well as the hypotenuse. And then from SOHCAHTOA, you see that CAH has adjacent and hypotenuse. And what does CAH say? CAH says that the cos of this angle is equal to the length of the adjacent. So I'm naming the length of the adjacent as PR divided by the length of the hypotenuse, which is 300 kilometers. So cos 50 is the same as cos 50 over 1. You do the cross multiplication. So we now have 300 times cos 50. So 300 cos 50 is equal to the length of PR. So again, from our calculator, what is 300 cos 50? 192.2 decimal places, 84. So PR is equal to 192.84 kilometers, which also represents how far east the aeroplane has traveled. I hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next time.